Hey everyone, welcome to Glow with Grace. So, I wanted to talk about some controversial thoughts on parenting today. Some ideas that have come to my mind over the last year or so of being a parent. And I'm kind of nervous about doing this video because this is not kind of typical for me to go into kind of controversial grounds. And I do find that whenever I try to speak to anybody about these things that I want to share today, almost nobody wants to speak to me about them, which I find really interesting because to me this is like fascinating subject area. So I'm just kind of curious to put this out there on a video and see what happens. Maybe I'm going to be deleting lots of comments. I don't know. So for anyone who isn't familiar with our background, I wanted to give a brief little explanation of how we're raising our daughter Araya. She is like a year and a couple of weeks at this point. I guess it could kind of be summed up under the term attachment parenting or natural parenting, whatever kind of term you want to use. That's kind of our aim. So we had an unassisted birth, a water birth, lotus birth, home birth. She is still breastfeeding. We're breastfeeding full term. She is diaper free, nappy free. We do baby wearing, co-sleeps with us, all that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of direction that we're coming from. And I don't want to be talking here about the typical kind of controversial things about parenting or baby raising. Like, do you do vaccinations or not? Does the child go to school or not? Breast or bottle, that whole kind of thing. I think there's plenty of discussion about all that kind of stuff out there. These are just some ideas, some thoughts that came to me, as I said, over this last year, and that, to me, I think it's really fascinating, but maybe nobody else does. I don't know. So here we go. There's 4 things that I really wanted to talk about. I'm just going to do it. So number 1 is, I think that human babies are really strange. We're just like really helpless when we're born. We're like totally frail. We can't even hold our heads up. We have no teeth. And when the teeth come in, it's really painful often for the child. We can't even, like poo or pee or anything by ourselves. We can't digest anything often. We're having all these like digestive issues and colic issues, and I just think it's really strange. We can't even hold our heads up, we're just like totally floppy. To me, I look at that kind of reality and I think, seriously? Like, is this supposedly the result of evolution over like hundreds of thousands of years? There's an interesting story in the book Magical Child by Joseph Chilton Pearce, which really piqued my interest about this topic. I think of it in terms of other mammals like cows, giraffes, horses, elephants, all those kind of things, deers, many, many, many other animals. They're pretty much born walking, they're born running, they have to be to survive, and I know the whole thing about we have big heads because we're so clever, that whole argument, and we have to be born early so that our big heads can blah blah blah. Yeah, interesting. What about the size of an elephant's head? I just think this stuff's interesting. So, anyway, back to Joseph Chilton Pearce and Magical Child. So, he talks in that book about a tribe in Africa, and forgive me, I don't have the book right here, I don't remember the name of the tribe. But anyway, the statistics from the research done with this tribe are just astonishing. If I'm remembering right, it's something like every single baby, pretty much, in their tribe, like, I think, like, without exception, holds their head up. I mean, definitely within the first week. Some of them just like immediately, I think, some within like 4 days or something, but their head's held up within, definitely the first week of life. Within 4 to 6 weeks, they are crawling competently. Weeks, not months. I just think that's really interesting. Now, it's a bit of an old book. It's from last century, but still, like, if that's possible, just, a few decades ago in a tribe, that the babies are like that, what on earth is going on with our babies? I don't know. I think it's really interesting. I think about, in terms of like the kind of Western price work, and all the work about how we're kind of de-evolved in terms of our skeletal structures, our teeth, our bones, our jaws, all of that kind of stuff. Maybe we're kind of de-evolved as human babies as well. I don't know. Also, even like a domestic dog, right? That's not a wild animal. Domestic dogs, we bred them, we made these strange things out of wolves. But even a domestic dog can do like pretty much everything by like 8 weeks old. They can do everything they're going to do. They can eat, they got teeth, they can run around, they can poo and pee, they understand where to go, all of that kind of stuff within like 8 weeks. Well, anyway, I wanted to discuss these 4 things and to say how we coped with each of them. So this one, the kind of why do we have strange babies question, just deal with it, right? It's like, okay, this is what a baby human is like. Let's just deal with it, What else is there to do? I do wonder if through like social pressure we managed to carry on as a species with babies like this. I mean, I just don't get it, like how we survived otherwise. Because, I mean, I guess we just haven't been out in the wild for a long time. I don't know. Strange babies. All right, the next one, number 2. I call this the gadgets versus hands theory by stokes-monarch. So, it seems to me that people, to cope with these kind of babies that we have, either use a load of different hands to help them, i.e. a kind of tribal situation where there's lots of different people around to help you, or gadgets. Well, I mean, gadgets is kind of a little bit misleading, but I kind of group things together in that area, like bottles, cribs, pacifiers, all those kind of gadgets that are kind of like to replace a mum or a caregiver, strollers, daycare, just all that kind of stuff, playpens, high chairs, bouncing chairs that hang in the doorway, all that kind of stuff. So baby monitors. There's like all this stuff that is kind of like in the gadgets field in my head, which may not be the case for anybody else. And then on the other hand, there's the whole kind of tribal thing, like all these people to help you. If you imagine a kind of typical tribal setting, there might be like all the women sitting around together. Maybe there's like 20 women, like 15 kids, who knows, and the women are taking care of looking after the children. They're even probably sharing the breastfeeding. They're sharing everything, the cooking, the cleaning, the everything. So it's not just one woman all the time looking after one or more babies all the time, So yeah, the way that I look at it is the kind of modern equivalent of the tribe with all the different hands is the gadgets. So what do you do when you're a tribe of 2 people, like in a typical setting, if you're the parents of a child? What do you do, especially if you're a tribe of 1 person, a single parent? I don't know. It's a funny situation. How do we cope? What we do to cope with this one, the gadgets versus hands conundrum, is we hire local women to help us out with Araya. So she is always either with one of us or with local women who absolutely just love her and she loves them. So she's always with someone who totally loves her and is totally happy to be with her. I feel super, super, super blessed to be able to do that. The women here typically have children pretty young compared to our kind of standards, and they just seem to be like total naturals at looking after children. And Araya's always really happy. So we don't really have almost any of those kind of gadget things. What else could you do? Maybe you could hire like local teenagers in your area. Maybe you could choose a few select gadgets that help you out. But one thing I feel for sure is if you are a tribe of 1 or 2 people and you're trying to look after a baby 24/7, this like floppy, helpless, can't hold its head up kind of human baby, and you don't have either a ton of hands or a ton of gadgets, I don't know how you do it. Maybe you can put an answer in the comments. Another idea I had about what you could maybe do, I really, really like this idea. And actually, this is something else that I've never said out loud, but I love it. So the idea is to join together as a group or a kind of like mini tribe of women or mothers. The vision I was seeing was, let's say there's like 5 women who live near each other or whatever, don't have to, but you want to join together. And let's say Monday you go to Susie's house and everybody helps there at Susie's house doing something for a couple of hours that Susie wants to do and she's not really getting done. And then the next day you go to Jenna's house and you do all what she wants to do. Your children are all together, playing together. Someone's maybe looking after children, someone's making the food, whatever. People are helping out with the stuff. And the next day you go to someone else's house. You know, that kind of idea, like a kind of moving tribe, because, you know, most of us live in our own houses at this point. We don't tend to live kind of communally around like a central little village space or something. So I thought that was a really lovely idea, this kind of tribal moving mamas group. If anyone does something like that or can set something like that up, I'd love to hear about it. All right, number 3. I can see this is turning into a long video. Number 3, gosh, all this stuff just feels so controversial. So I feel like in the modern kind of systems that we live in, it's almost like a battle to enjoy children. And I feel like it's really sad that that's the situation that we're in. You know, I see that most people seem to have these really kind of stressful, fast-paced lifestyles. And maybe also they're like really centered around their careers, those kind of things. We do not live typically in those kind of like simple tribal settings. And then suddenly if you throw a baby into that mixture, it just feels like this whole other huge degree of stress. You know, it can feel, I imagine, for a lot of people like just this massive extra stressor. You know, you suddenly have this tiny, helpless, frail human baby, kind of primal creature on your hands that is just, it's got no idea about your schedule and your modern lifestyle, you know? This primal creature in this modern setting. And in the John Holt books, if you've ever read any of his stuff, I really recommend it. John Holt, lots of things about unschooling. He poses a very pertinent question. Do most people at this point seem to actually enjoy their children? If you're kind of stressing about your situation with them, you're sending them off to daycare, they're in like day prison or school all day, his impression was that most people do not actually even like children, which feels like a really strong, painful statement to make. I think it's an interesting one to look at though in our kind of societies. Like, does that actually resonate? That maybe that is true. The way that we've set things up, it's actually like a battle to enjoy children, it feels like. One thing that really shocked me about this subject recently was someone showed me that there's actually an entire movement now in North America called something like the Movement for No Children or something like that. I can't remember the name. But it's literally an entire like movement about not having children. And the statistics I heard were just like shocking. Like something like 40% of childbearing age women in North America do not have children at this point. Through a combination, it seems, of not wanting to, career paths, infertility, and who knows what else, you know? So the movement to not have children, I mean, that's the point that we've come to as a species. Like, can you imagine any other species on this planet saying, yeah, actually, I'm going to start a group about not having any more children because, you know, it's just too stressful? Like, seriously, like, the main energy that's coming out of most animals once they hit that stage is reproduce, reproduce, reproduce. That's you know, inbuilt in them. And yet in us, it just seems to be getting, like, seriously skewed, you know? Along the same lines, in terms of looking at ourselves compared to other animals, I find it really, really odd when people say to me, you know, we're thinking about only having one child or not having children, or maybe we can't afford another child. Afford a child. Like, in financial terms, people seem to speak really often about children in financial terms. Again, like, compared to any kind of animal, what kind of sense does that make? What kind of situation have we got ourselves into that we think that reproducing our species is based on how many pieces of paper we have? You know, like what our bank account looks like. It's bizarre. And to me, it feels like this is just part of that whole picture that I'm sure a lot of you watching this are fully aware of, the whole kind of population control stuff, you know, the fluoride in the water, the 9 to 5 stressful lives, the vaccines, the hospital births, the schooling, the financial concerns hanging over everyone's heads, the GMO, you know, all of this kind of stuff. That whole picture of control and domination, and basically having, yeah, people who are really stressed and controlled. And if you are in that whole picture and trying to enjoy your offspring, I don't know. I don't feel like it's the easiest path, you know? I feel that one of the main outcomes of that kind of stressful, controlled paradigm that most people seem to live in at this point is that we are just not living anywhere near our potential lifespan. I totally believe that we are fully capable of living like 120 years at least at this point. And most people, it seems like they conk out like 60, 70 at this point. To me, it looks like just huge stress, you know, like just living crazy stressful lives. And to me, it seems just like this radical thing to actually enjoy, like genuinely enjoy a child in that whole picture. It's like a radical thing to do. So what do we do in terms of this one? Well, we do our best to enjoy, you know, to reduce all that kind of stress in our lives and unplug from that kind of matrix and trust in the universe to take care of us, and we do our best to enjoy her. All right, the last one, number 4. I kind of summed this up under the title of cultural lies or myths or deceptions. So I feel like females in our kind of societies, women in our societies, are led along this path that feels to me pretty much deceptive in terms of this idea of having it all, doing it all, the whole kind of supermom, feminism, I can do it all kind of thing. I can work full time and be the greatest parent on earth and exercise and eat well and blah, 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 blah. I feel like it's this huge amount of pressure on women, and to me it just feels deceptive. Now, I am not sitting here and saying that I think women shouldn't, you know, have higher education or the vote or careers or something. I just feel it's really strange the way that we have things set up, because it seems like women are kind of encouraged, just the same as men, to kind of go to university, get your degree, get in your job, blah, 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 that whole kind of path. And then if a baby comes along, what now? The woman very often seems to be hugely split between, oh my God, there's this tiny person who I'm like ridiculously in love with and want to take care of. And what about my career? And it just seems like this toxic, horrible situation for everyone, because the woman doesn't necessarily realize that whole thing that's going to unfold. As I said, here where we live, the women tend to have children pretty young. And it's just totally different. The whole social structure, whole paradigm here just feels totally different. It's like women know that is their path, it seems like here. They don't have this whole thing in their head about creating their own whole story and going traveling here and I'm doing this and this is my career and blah, blah, blah. Which, great, if that's what we want, then, we have so many more opportunities in our kind of societies to do that. Here, it's like they just don't usually go in that direction at all. It just doesn't seem to be the thing, They just know, I'm going to have children, and they just take it in their stride. They're great at looking after them. And that's the thing they do, And they're happy. They're like genuinely happy. It looks like, looking after these children. And then I look at our kind of situation and I just feel like, what is that? The whole thing looks deceptive to me. And you know what? People typically have a record of living a really long life here. There's a lot of centenarians around. People often live into their 80s or 90s, totally normal. They are super healthy. They work out in the fields. They are absolutely compos mentis, 80, 90 years old. You can have a conversation with them like they were, 30, 40 years old. Completely different lifestyle. Totally different lifestyle. So again, I'm not saying I don't feel like women ought not go down the path of education and careers and all that kind of stuff. I just feel like it's an illusion to think that it's all easily going to fit together. That this tiny primal being showing up in your life is going to easily fit in with your law career or your doctor life or whatever it is, and you're going to be able to clean the house and blah, 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 I especially feel like it can be really challenging for older women in our societies who have babies, because, we have this whole thing set up of me, my story, I'm this, I'm that, blah, blah. We have this very kind of narcissistic, selfish, me-centered kind of mentality rather than being a kind of tribal society. And if a woman has been doing that kind of thing for, 3 or 4 decades and then she suddenly has a baby, that can be a huge shock to the system, like, what is this? Who is this person showing up in my story, And again, I just feel like that's part of this whole kind of illusion of, you can fit a child into everything else and it's totally easy. Doesn't feel like that to me. And again, here it's totally different. People tend to start having children from their late teens onwards. It's like completely common here. I feel like the imagery that we grow up with in Western societies obviously contributes massively to this kind of paradigm as well. The imagery of, the happy families and you can do it all, and also even I've been feeling as well since having a baby, so much of the imagery in our media is about kind of sexuality between couples, and it's kind of like the whole kind of baby parenting part of the picture is completely missed out. It's like, it's just all about the couple. It's about the lure, the romance of the coupledom, and then there's kind of like no part of the story about looking after a newborn, and then there's all the kind of like happy family pictures and you can do it all, that kind of energy. So I'm not sure about that kind of media influence, and it feels to me like those kind of images strongly support the feeling that it's not okay to talk about the kind of stuff that I'm talking about right now. For example, this is all taboo in the world of parenting. You can't talk about the fact that human babies seem a bit strange, You're not allowed to do that. There's actually a really great TED Talk, if you've never seen it. Go to TED.com. They have all these incredible videos, talks, lectures, like they're usually like less than 20 minutes. And there's one on there that's about parenting taboos. I think it's called something like the 4 taboos of parenting or something like that. I thought that was really insightful because, we just seem to have this whole kind of structure of you can't talk about things that are out of the ordinary around parenting. You just have to say that everything's great and, your baby's wonderful, and that's that. One last point that I wanted to make about this is I feel within this structure of the whole kind of like lies, or whatever you want to call it, deceptive illusions around what it's actually like to parent, I feel that we're really creating a situation where we're missing out on a lot in our societies through that, because the people who don't yet have children tend to not know at all what reality is like for the people who do have children. And I say this, not in any kind of like blaming or victim or anything like that kind of way. I just feel that it's completely true. I didn't know anything about what reality was like truly for people who had children until I was in this situation. And I feel really sad about that, because I see now how much I could have helped other people before I had a child of my own. And I just feel like what a shame, what a lot of things that I missed out on, what a lot of help the other people missed out on that I didn't know to give. I think of one specific example here where we live. When we arrived here, I heard that a woman had recently had a baby and she was struggling. She could really use some help. And in my heart, I wanted to go and help her. And in my head, I was like, what can I do? I don't know anything about babies. Like, why would I be any of help? And I never went. And now I know from looking after a newborn, if I'd even gone and held that baby for like 5 minutes, even if the baby was crying, and I took it, for 5 minutes to give the mum a mental break from dealing with that kind of intensity, it would have been a huge help. But I didn't know, because in our societies, that's how it is, right? The people who don't have children don't know what it's like for the people who do have children. It's like this kind of secret club or something. The people who actually have children and are in, the same kind of stressful lifestyle usually as the people who don't have children are often like just run dry, just totally wrung out and looking for help. But the other people don't know. And I feel like that's really sad. And I'm not sure what to do about that, other than just to start talking about it. This whole kind of cultural lies, cultural myths, deceptions, illusions thing. I feel like if we don't start talking about these kind of things, if it resonates for us, if we don't talk about them, they just stay the way they are, right? So, yeah, how do we cope with this? I guess I'm doing it right now, talking about it. So there we go. That was my 4 thoughts, controversial thoughts on parenting. I am kind of nervous to see what kind of comments come out of this. And I'm happy that I spoke about this too, because, as I said, these things have been on my mind, and whenever I try to speak to people about them in person, I just feel like the conversation goes nowhere. People don't want to talk about these things. So hopefully some of you out there have enjoyed these thoughts, and see you next time.